The vast emptiness of space stretched out before the Zarquin exploration vessel. Captain Selma stood on the bridge, her 4 eyes scanning the holographic displays surrounding her. The ship had been searching for new habitable worlds for cycles, but so far they had found nothing of interest. "Captain," called out First Officer Vextor, his tentacles waving in excitement, "we've detected a new solar system ahead. It appears to have several planets orbiting a yellow dwarf star." Zelna's skin rippled with anticipation. "Excellent. Move us into range for detailed scans." As the ship approached the system, the crew buzzed with activity. It had been so long since they'd found anything promising. The Zarquin were an ancient race, having explored much of their galaxy. New discoveries were rare and precious. "Captain, we're picking up some unusual readings from the third planet," reported Science Officer Zorlath. Her exoskeleton clicked as she moved to a different console. "It appears to be a class death world." A hush fell over the bridge. Class death worlds were considered the most extreme environments in the known universe. They were planets with such harsh conditions that no intelligent life could possibly evolve or survive there. "Show me," Selna commanded. A holographic image of a blue and green planet appeared in the center of the bridge. It looked deceptively peaceful from a distance. Zorlath began listing off the planet's characteristics. Extreme temperature variations, ranging from scorching heat to freezing cold. Vast bodies of corrosive liquid covering most of the surface. Crushing atmospheric pressure. Constant exposure to deadly radiation from its star. Frequent geological instabilities causing massive energy releases. And perhaps most shockingly, the atmosphere is filled with a highly reactive and corrosive gas. Oxygen. The crew murmured in disbelief. Any one of these conditions would make a planet challenging for life. Combined, they created an environment that seemed impossible to survive. "Fascinating," Selna said, her voice filled with wonder. "Have we detected any signs of life?" Zorlath shook her head. "Nothing that our long-range scans can pick up. But given the conditions, that's not surprising. No known species could withstand such an environment." Zelna considered this information. Class death worlds were rare, and the Zarquin had never had the opportunity to study one up close. This could be a groundbreaking scientific opportunity. "Prepare a probe for launch," she ordered. "We'll send it to gather more detailed data about the planet's surface." The crew sprang into action, excited by the prospect of studying such an extreme world. Within moments, a sleek, shielded probe was launched towards the blue planet. As it entered the atmosphere, the probe's sensors began transmitting data back to the ship. The crew watched in amazement as readings poured in, confirming their initial scans and revealing even more hostile conditions. "The probe is detecting massive electrical discharges in the atmosphere," Vextor reported, "and there appear to be large areas of the surface covered in a highly flammable substance that ignites regularly." Zelna's skin changed color, reflecting her awe. "This world truly is a death trap. It's remarkable that it even exists in such a stable state." The probe continued its descent, sampling the atmosphere and scanning the surface. Suddenly, an alert sounded. "Captain," Zorlath exclaimed. "The probe has detected something unexpected. There are artificial structures on the surface." The bridge erupted in shocked exclamations. Selna moved closer to the holographic display, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," she whispered. "Show me." The image zoomed in, revealing sprawling cities, vast networks of roads, and clear signs of technological development. The structures were unlike anything the Zarquin had seen before, clearly adapted to the planet's harsh conditions. "But how?" Vextor asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. How could any life form, let alone an intelligent species, evolve in such an environment? Zelna stared at the image, her mind racing. Everything they thought they knew about the limits of life had just been challenged. Whatever species called this death world home, they must be incredibly resilient and adaptable. "It seems," she said slowly, "that we've made a discovery far more significant than we could have imagined. We're not just looking at a class death world. We're looking at a world that has given birth to a species that can thrive in conditions we considered impossible. The implications were staggering. If life could evolve here, what other assumptions about the universe might be wrong? And what kind of beings were these creatures, shaped by such a lethal world? Inform High Command immediately, Selna ordered. We need to prepare for first contact. It seems the galaxy just got a lot more interesting. As the message was sent, Selna couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. They had come looking for new worlds to colonize. Instead, they had found a species that might just redefine their understanding of life itself. The Zarquin ship hung in Earth's orbit, a silent sentinel observing the blue planet below. On the bridge, Captain Selna paced back and forth, her 4 eyes darting between the holographic displays. It had been 3 rotations since they'd discovered this impossible world, and the crew was on edge with anticipation. Any response to our transmissions? Selna asked, her skin rippling with impatience. Communications Officer Lirith shook her head, antennae drooping. Nothing yet, Captain. We've been broadcasting on all frequencies, but there's no sign they've noticed us. Selna clicked her mandibles in frustration. High Command had ordered them to make contact, but to do so carefully. The beings on this death world were an unknown quantity, potentially dangerous. Suddenly, a loud beep echoed through the bridge. Lirith's antennae shot up in excitement. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. On screen, Selna ordered, her heart's racing. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a bipedal creature with pinkish-brown skin and a tuft of dark fur on top of its head. The alien's mouth moved, producing sounds that the ship's computers quickly translated. This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Agency. We've detected your presence in our orbit. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The bridge crew stared in amazement. The creature seemed so fragile. How could it survive on such a harsh world? Selna stepped forward, her voice steady as she responded. I am Captain Selna of the Zarquin exploration vessel, Cosmic Seeker. We come in peace, seeking to learn about your world and your species. Dr. Chen's expression changed, her mouth curving upward in what the Zarquin's cultural database identified as a smile, a sign of positive emotions. We welcome you, Captain Selna. This is a historic moment for humanity. We'd like to invite a delegation from your ship to our International Space Station for a face-to-face meeting. Selna conferred quickly with her officers. This was moving faster than they'd anticipated, but it was an opportunity they couldn't pass up. We accept your invitation, Dr. Chen. Please provide coordinates for docking. As the communication ended, the bridge erupted in excited chatter. First Officer Vextor approached Selna, his tentacles twitching nervously. Captain, are we sure it's safe? The environment on their station might be as deadly as their planet. Selna nodded. A valid concern. We'll go in full protective suits. Prepare the diplomatic team. Hours later, a small Zarquin shuttle approached the human space station. Through the viewport, Selna marveled at the crude yet ingenious construction. These humans had managed to build a habitat in the vacuum of space, despite evolving on a world that should have made such advancement impossible. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud. Selna led her team, all encased in shimmering protective suits, to the airlock. As the door hissed open, they came face to face with a group of humans who looked at them with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Dr. Chen stepped forward, extending a hand. Welcome aboard, Captain Selna. Selna stared at the offered limb, unsure of how to respond. Her suit's sensors were going haywire, detecting numerous environmental hazards. The temperature was far too high, the air pressure was crushing, and the atmosphere was filled with corrosive oxygen. Yet the humans stood there, completely at ease, protected by nothing more than thin layers of cloth. Thank you, Dr. Chen, Selna replied, cautiously extending a suited limb to mimic the greeting. We are honored to be here. As they moved into the station proper, Selna and her team were hyper-aware of their surroundings. Every surface, every breath of air, seemed to promise death. But the humans moved about freely, even consuming local sustenance and liquid. During their tour, Dr. Chen explained various aspects of human life and their ventures into space. The Zarquin were astonished by the casualties humans had suffered in their quest for knowledge, yet they spoke of these losses with pride rather than fear. "You willingly send your people into these conditions?" Vextor asked, unable to hide his shock. Dr. Chen nodded, her expression serious. "Exploration is in our blood. We've always pushed the boundaries, no matter the risk." As the meeting progressed, Selna found herself reassessing everything she thought she knew about life in the universe. These humans weren't just surviving in a hostile world. They were thriving, reaching for the stars despite the odds. When it was time to leave, Selna turned to Dr. Chen. "We have much to learn from each other. This is just the beginning of what I hope will be a long and fruitful relationship between our peoples." As the Zarquin shuttle detached from the station, Selna watched the blue planet grow larger in the viewport. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had underestimated these humans. They were clearly far more resilient and adaptable than anyone could have imagined. The real question was, just how powerful could a species forged in such adversity become? The galaxy, it seemed, was in for some surprises. The Zarquin delegation stood nervously in the large conference room of the United Nations building in New York City. Despite their advanced protective suits, they felt exposed and vulnerable. Captain Selna's eyes darted around, taking in the towering buildings visible through the windows, the bustling city below, and the diverse group of humans gathered before them. Dr. Sarah Chen, now acting as their guide and interpreter, smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, Captain. The air here is perfectly safe for you." Zelna's skin rippled with doubt. "With all due respect, Dr. Chen, our sensors indicate otherwise. The oxygen levels alone are highly dangerous." A murmur of confusion spread through the human delegates. One of them, a tall man with dark skin, leaned forward. "Excuse me, but are you saying oxygen is dangerous to you?" Vextor, the first officer, answered, his voice tinged with surprise. "Of course it is. Oxygen is a highly reactive and corrosive gas. How do you tolerate it?" The room fell silent as the humans exchanged bewildered glances. Then, unexpectedly, laughter erupted. The Zarquin delegation tensed, unsure how to interpret this reaction. Dr. Chen quickly intervened, her face flushed. "I apologize for the misunderstanding. You see, oxygen is essential for our survival. We breathe it." The Zarquin were stunned. Zorlaf, the science officer, spoke up, her exoskeleton clicking in agitation. "You breathe a corrosive gas, voluntarily." "Not only that," added another human delegate, a woman with silvery hair, "but we need it to live. Our cells use it to produce energy." The alien shock was palpable. They had known humans were resilient, but this was beyond their comprehension. A species that not only survived in a toxic atmosphere but required it to live. As the initial shock wore off, the meeting continued. The humans, eager to learn about their visitors, peppered them with questions. However, each answer seemed to create more confusion and amazement on both sides. When asked about their diet, the Zarquin described their nutrient absorption process, which involved no solid food. The humans, in turn, explained their need to consume various plants and animals. "You put dead organic matter inside your bodies?" Selna asked, her tone a mixture of horror and fascination. "Well, yes," Dr. Chen replied, looking slightly uncomfortable. "It's how we get our energy and nutrients." The Zarquin huddled together, whispering furiously. The humans waited, puzzled by their reaction. Finally, Zelna turned back to the group. "We apologize, but we need to understand. You live on a planet with extreme temperature variations, breathe corrosive gas, and regularly ingest potentially harmful substances. How are you still alive?" The room fell silent again, but this time it was the humans who looked confused. A young delegate from Japan spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. "This is just normal for us. It's how we've always lived." As the meeting progressed, more differences came to light. The human sleep cycle, their exposure to solar radiation, their ability to withstand varying gravitational forces, all of it seemed impossible to the Zarquin. Towards the end of the session, a burly human male approached the alien delegation. He was dressed differently from the others, wearing a uniform with various patches and medals. "I'm General Thompson," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "I hope you don't mind, but I have a question about your military capabilities." The Zarquin looked at each other, puzzled. "Military capabilities?" Selena repeated. "Yes," the general continued. "Defense systems, weapons, that sort of thing." Vextor stepped forward. "We have defensive capabilities on our ships, of course. But we haven't engaged in warfare for thousands of cycles. It's considered barbaric." The general's eyebrows shot up. "No wars? At all? How do you resolve conflicts?" "Through discussion and compromise," Selena replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. The human delegates exchanged glances, a mix of admiration and skepticism on their faces. General Thompson cleared his throat. "Well, that's certainly something to aspire to." As the meeting drew to a close, both sides were left with much to ponder. The Zarquin were amazed by the humans' hardiness and their ability to thrive in conditions that should be lethal. The humans, in turn, were intrigued by the aliens' peaceful nature and advanced technology. Dr. Chen approached Captain Selena as they were preparing to leave. "I hope this meeting has been informative, despite the misunderstandings." Selena's skin shifted to a warm color, indicating agreement. "Indeed, Dr. Chen. We have much to learn from each other. Though I must admit, your species continues to baffle and impress us." As the Zarquin boarded their shuttle to return to their ship, they couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. These humans were unlike anything they had encountered before. The galaxy, it seemed, was about to get a lot more interesting. The Grand Hall of the United Nations buzzed with excitement. Delegates from every nation on Earth had gathered to meet with the Zarquin representatives. Captain Selena and her crew stood at the front, still encased in their protective suits, facing the sea of curious human faces. As the meeting progressed, discussions ranged from technology exchange to cultural sharing. However, there was an undercurrent of tension. Many human leaders were concerned about the vast technological gap between their species. Suddenly, a loud voice cut through the chatter. "How do we know we can trust them?" All eyes turned to the source. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern face. He was General Viktor Volkov, representative of a powerful nation known for its military might. "They claim to be peaceful," Volkov continued, his voice echoing in the now silent hall. "But they hide behind their suits, unwilling to even breathe our air. How can we be sure they don't see us as simple, primitive beings to be conquered?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through some sections of the crowd. Captain Selena stepped forward, her 4 eyes blinking in confusion. "I assure you, General, we have no intention of conquest. We came here to learn and to share knowledge," she said, her translator conveying her earnest tone. Volkov scoffed. "Words are easy. Actions are what matter. If you truly respect us as equals, prove it." Dr. Chen, standing nearby, tried to intervene. "General, please. The Zarquin have shown nothing but goodwill." But Volkov was on a roll. "I challenge you, alien visitors. If you truly think you're so superior, let's put it to the test. Face us in our environment, without your protective gear." Gasps echoed through the hall. Even some of Volkov's allies looked shocked at the boldness of his challenge. Captain Selena's skin rippled with a mix of emotions, surprise, indignation, and a hint of fear. She huddled with her crew, speaking rapidly in their native tongue. Vextor, the first officer, was adamant. "Captain, we can't possibly accept. The conditions here are lethal to us." But Zorlath, the science officer, had a different view. Actually, our preliminary studies suggest we might be able to survive for short periods without our suits. It would be extremely uncomfortable, but not immediately fatal. Zelna considered this information carefully. She could see the humans watching them, waiting for their response. This was a crucial moment that could shape the future of their interspecies relations. Taking a deep breath, or the Zarquin equivalent, Zelna turned back to face the assembly. "We accept your challenge, General Volkov." The hall erupted in shocked exclamations. Volkov himself looked taken aback, clearly not expecting the aliens to agree. However, Selna continued, her voice firm. "We have a condition of our own. If we can survive in your environment, you must attempt to survive in ours. A fair exchange, wouldn't you agree?" A hush fell over the crowd. Dr. Chen looked from the Zarquin to Volkov, and back, her face a mask of concern. Volkov's expression hardened. And what exactly would that entail? Zelna's skin shimmered, a sign of determination in her species. "A series of trials. We will face the challenges of your world, your atmosphere, your gravity, your foods. In return, you will attempt to withstand the conditions we consider normal, our atmospheric pressure, our nutrient solutions, our gravitational fields." The general's eyes narrowed, but a small smile played on his lips. "Interesting. And what would be the point of this competition?" "Understanding," Selna replied without hesitation. "True, deep understanding of each other's strengths and limitations. No more assumptions, no more fear of the unknown. We learn about you, you learn about us, and we all grow wiser in the process." The hall was silent as everyone considered the implications. It was Dr. Chen who finally broke the silence. "This is unprecedented," she said, her voice filled with a mix of worry and excitement. "But it could be an incredible opportunity for both our species. General Volkov, delegates of Earth, what do you say?" All eyes turned to Volkov. The general stood straight, his chest puffed out. "We accept," he declared. "Let the challenge begin." As word of the agreement spread, a buzz of excitement filled the air. Humans, and Zarquin alike, began to prepare for what would undoubtedly be a series of grueling trials. Captain Selna watched the flurry of activity, her hearts racing. She had just committed her crew to facing the deadliest environment they had ever encountered. But as she looked at the determined faces of the humans around her, she couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Perhaps this challenge would bridge the gap between their species in a way nothing else could. The true test of their differences, and their similarities, was about to begin. The first light of dawn broke over the horizon, illuminating the strange scene on a remote beach. A group of Zarquin, free from their protective suits for the first time on Earth, stood nervously at the water's edge. Nearby, a team of humans, including General Volkov and Dr. Chen, watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Captain Selma's skin rippled uncomfortably as she felt the alien air on her exposed body. The oxygen burned slightly, and the humidity felt oppressive. But she stood tall, determined to face this challenge. "The first trial," announced Dr. Chen, "is to survive in Earth's various environments. We'll start with the ocean." General Volkov smirked. "Let's see how you handle a little salt water, aliens." Selna nodded to her crew, and together, they stepped into the waves. The sensation was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The water felt heavy, the salt stung their skin, and the constant motion of the waves was disorienting. To everyone's surprise, the Zarquin didn't immediately sink or dissolve. Instead, they floated, their bodies naturally buoyant in the dense water. Selna found she could propel herself through the water with gentle movements of her limbs. "Fascinating," muttered Zorlath, the science officer. "The salinity is actually helping us stay afloat." The humans watched in amazement as the aliens swam about, quickly adapting to the new environment. Even Volkov looked impressed. After an hour in the ocean, the Zarquin emerged, tired but triumphant. Dr. Chen approached with scanning equipment. "Your vital signs are stable," she said, sounding surprised. How do you feel? Exhausted, Selna admitted, but alive. The next trial took place in a dense rainforest. The Zarquin struggled with the humidity and the constant barrage of unfamiliar sounds and smells. Insects buzzed around them, some even landing on their sensitive skin. Vextor, the first officer, swatted at a mosquito. "How do you tolerate these tiny terrors?" he asked, his voice filled with discomfort. A human guide laughed. "We don't always, but we've learned to live with them." As they trekked through the forest, the Zarquin found themselves marveling at the diversity of life. Every plant, every creature seemed to be fighting for survival, yet somehow coexisting in a complex ecosystem. The third trial brought them to a scorching desert. The Zarquin, used to stable temperatures, found the heat almost unbearable. Their skin dried out quickly, and they had to be constantly sprayed with water to prevent dehydration. "This is madness," gasped Vextor as he huddled in the shade of a rock. "How can any life survive here?" As if in answer, a small lizard scurried past, seemingly unaffected by the heat. The humans pointed out various plants and animals, each uniquely adapted to the harsh environment. "Life finds a way," Dr. Chen said softly. "It always does." The final trial of the day took place in a bustling city. The Zarquin, already exhausted from their previous challenges, now had to navigate crowds, traffic, and the constant noise of urban life. They watched in awe as humans rushed about their daily lives, seemingly oblivious to the harsh conditions around them. The air was filled with pollutants, the noise levels were off the charts, and the pace of life seemed frantic. "How do you not go mad?" Selna asked Dr. Chen as they waited to cross a busy street. Dr. Chen shrugged. "We adapt. We build. We change our environment and ourselves to survive." As night fell, the Zarquin were led to a human dwelling to rest. They collapsed onto soft beds, their bodies aching from the day's trials. General Volkov entered the room, his face unreadable. "Well," he said gruffly, "you've survived day one. I must admit, I'm impressed." Zelna raised her head, too tired to even ripple her skin. "Thank you, General. Your world is challenging, but also beautiful in its own way." Volkov nodded, a hint of respect in his eyes. "Rest well. Tomorrow brings new trials." As the humans left, the Zarquin huddled together, discussing the day's events in hushed tones. "Their world is so diverse, so extreme," Zorlaf mused. "No wonder they're so resilient." Selna nodded, her mind racing despite her exhaustion. And to think, they consider this normal. What kind of beings must they be, to not just survive, but thrive in such conditions? As sleep overtook them, the Zarquin couldn't help but feel a growing admiration for their human hosts. They had underestimated these beings, shaped by a world that seemed designed to challenge life at every turn. And this was just the beginning. What other surprises did this death world and its inhabitants have in store for them? The sun had barely risen when Captain Selna and her crew were roused from their uneasy sleep. Dr. Chen entered their room, her face a mix of concern and excitement. "It's time for the final test," she announced. "Are you ready?" The Zarquin exchanged nervous glances. Their bodies still ached from the previous day's trials, but they knew they couldn't back down now. "We are ready," Selna declared, her skin rippling with determination. As they left the building, they were met by General Volkov and a group of stern-looking military personnel. The general's face was grim. "Today's challenge will push you to your absolute limits," he said. "We're going to an active volcano." The Zarquin froze, their alien features contorting in shock. Vextor, the first officer, stepped forward. "Surely you jest. An active volcano is a death sentence." Dr. Chen quickly intervened. "It's not as dangerous as it sounds. We have safety measures in place, and we'll be observing from a safe distance." Selna considered their options. They had come too far to give up now. "We accept the challenge," she said firmly. The journey to the volcano was tense. As their vehicle approached the massive mountain, the Zarquin could see smoke billowing from its peak. The air grew hotter and thicker with ash. When they finally stopped, the landscape around them was alien even by Earth standards. Black, jagged rocks stretched as far as the eye could see. The ground was hot beneath their feet, and the air shimmered with heat. General Volkov pointed to a ridge overlooking a river of molten lava. "Your task is to reach that observation point and remain there for 1 hour." The Zarquin looked at the treacherous path ahead, then at each other. Without a word, they began their ascent. The climb was grueling. The sharp rocks cut into their sensitive skin, and the heat was almost unbearable. Every breath was a struggle in the ash-filled air. Halfway up, Zorlath, the science officer, stumbled and nearly fell into a steam vent. Selma caught her at the last second, pulling her to safety. How do humans study this?" Zorlath gasped, her skin pale and sickly. With great difficulty and preparation, Dr. Chen's voice crackled through their communication devices, "But the knowledge we gain is invaluable." As they neared the observation point, a loud rumble shook the ground. The volcano was becoming more active. "Perhaps we should turn back," Vextor suggested, his voice quivering. But Selma pressed on. "We're almost there. We can do this." With a final push, they reached the ridge. The view that greeted them was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. A river of glowing lava flowed below, its heat intense even from a distance. For the next hour, the Zarquin observed the volcano, taking readings with their equipment and marveling at the raw power of Earth's geology. Despite their discomfort, they found themselves fascinated by this extreme environment. As the hour drew to a close, the volcano suddenly roared to life. The ground shook violently, and a plume of ash shot into the sky. "Evacuation required." Dr. Chen's panicked voice came through their devices. "The volcano is entering an eruptive phase." The Zarquin didn't need to be told twice. They began their descent, moving as quickly as they dared on the treacherous slope. Rocks and ash rained down around them. The air grew even hotter, making it hard to breathe. Yet they pressed on, their survival instincts kicking in. As they neared the bottom, a massive explosion rocked the volcano. A wave of heat washed over them, and for a moment, the Zarquin thought this would be their end. But then, through the ash and smoke, they saw figures running towards them. It was the humans, coming to their aid despite the danger. General Volkov himself reached them first, helping a stumbling Vextor to his feet. "Come on," he shouted over the roar of the volcano. "We need to get out of here." Together, aliens and humans raced to the waiting vehicles. As they sped away from the erupting volcano, Selma looked back at the awesome display of nature's fury. Once they were a safe distance away, the vehicle stopped. Everyone climbed out, coughing and covered in ash, but alive. General Volkov approached the Zarquin, his face streaked with soot, but his eyes shining with newfound respect. "That," he said, "was not supposed to happen. But the way you handled it," he shook his head in amazement. "You've more than proven yourselves." Zelna, exhausted but proud, met the general's gaze. "We couldn't have survived without your help. Perhaps this challenge has proven something about both our species." As humans and aliens stood together, watching the distant volcano continue its eruption, there was a sense that something fundamental had changed. They had faced Earth's deadliest environment together and emerged stronger for it. The final test was over, but its impact would be felt for years to come. The Grand Hall of the United Nations was packed to capacity. Humans from every corner of the globe sat side by side with a delegation of Zarquin, no longer separated by protective barriers. The air buzzed with excitement and anticipation. At the center of the stage stood Captain Selna and General Volkov, an unlikely pair brought together by extraordinary circumstances. Dr. Chen stood nearby, ready to translate if needed, though the aliens had made remarkable progress in learning Earth languages. Members of Earth and honored guests from the stars, General Volkov began, his voice carrying across the hushed room. "We stand here today having witnessed something truly remarkable." Zelna's skin rippled in agreement as she took over. "When we first arrived on your world, we thought it impossible for life to thrive here. We saw only danger and hostility in your environment. And we," Volkov added, "saw only potential threats in our visitors from the stars." How wrong we all were. Images flashed on the screen behind them. The Zarquin swimming in the ocean, trekking through the rainforest, enduring the desert heat, and finally escaping the erupting volcano. These trials, Selna continued, taught us more than we could have imagined. We learned of the incredible adaptability of life, of the strength that can be found in diversity, and of the indomitable spirit of humanity. Volkov nodded. "And we learned that there is more than one way to be strong." The Zarquin showed us a resilience of a different kind, a willingness to face the unknown, to push beyond their limits, and to trust in the face of fear. The audience listened intently, humans and aliens alike captivated by the story of mutual discovery and growing respect. "But perhaps the most important lesson," Zelna said, her voice soft but clear, "was one of unity. When the volcano erupted, it was not alien against human or human against nature. It was all of us together, facing a challenge greater than our differences." Volkov's usually stern face softened. "In that moment, we were not two species, but one team. And that, I believe, is the key to our future." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Dr. Chen stepped forward. "In light of these events, both our governments have agreed to form a joint committee for interstellar relations. This committee will oversee cultural exchanges, scientific collaborations, and diplomatic relations between Earth and the Zarquin homeworld." The announcement was met with thunderous applause. Humans and Zarquin alike stood, cheering and celebrating this new era of cooperation. As the applause died down, Selna raised her hands for silence. "There is one more thing," she said, her skin shimmering with excitement. "Our science officer, Zorlath, has made a fascinating discovery." Zorlath stepped forward, looking nervous but proud. "In studying the extreme conditions of Earth and how life here has adapted, we've made a breakthrough in our own technology. We believe we can now terraform some of the harsh, lifeless planets in our own solar system, using the principles we've learned here." The implications of this announcement took a moment to sink in, but when it did, the excitement in the room was palpable. Humans and Zarquin alike realized that this could open up new worlds for both their species. "This is just the beginning," Volkov declared. "Together, there's no telling what we might achieve." As the ceremony concluded, Selna found herself surrounded by human scientists, eager to discuss the possibilities of joint space exploration. Nearby, Vexter was deep in conversation with a group of human military officers, exchanging stories of their respective training methods. Dr. Chen approached Selna, a warm smile on her face. "So, Captain, what do you think of our death world now?" Zelna's skin rippled with amusement. "I think, Dr. Chen, that we may need to revise our classification system. Perhaps Crucible World would be more appropriate. A place where life is forged in adversity, emerging stronger and more resilient." As they looked out over the mingling crowd of humans and aliens, both felt a sense of hope for the future. The galaxy had become a much more interesting place, full of potential and promise. Earth, once seen as a deadly anomaly, was now recognized as a wellspring of strength and innovation. And humanity, no longer isolated in the cosmos, had found its place among the stars. The challenges ahead were many, but facing them together, both species knew that they were capable of overcoming anything the universe might throw at them. After all, if life could thrive on a world like Earth, what couldn't be achieved? The story of humanity and the Zarquin was just beginning, and the whole galaxy was waiting to see what would come next.